welcome to another edition of the Never Quit podcast, sponsored and hosted by Quotes Jungle. In this episode, I have Kevin Patrick next to me. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm fantastic. Excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. We're going to get right into it. What do you do for a living?
I'm actually a computer programmer, if you will. Well, I'm actually not programming now. I actually went to college on a golf scholarship, and I majored in computer science. I went to Grambling, grew up in Oakland, California, and made my way down to Louisiana. So currently, I graduated in 1987. Since then, I've been in the computer science area. I've been a programmer. I've been quality assurance. I've done DevOps, which is a new area in this cloud-based world. And right now, I'm actually a project manager. So I work for NORAD, which is the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and they actually guard the airspace in North America and Canada as well. So pretty much I'm managing projects that the government has in place to guard the country.
What is the most interesting programming that you've done?
You know, I think my current job is actually pretty exciting in that this is the first job that I've had that actually deals with something meaningful, if you will. So in this case, the work that I'm doing right now deals with the lives of the American people. It deals with protecting our country, and so it's meaningful. You didn't ask me that question, but I would say the most interesting programming job that I had was probably my first job out of college, and I actually programmed flight simulators. And in this case, the Navy had an aircraft called the P-3C Orion, and it's they call it a sub-detector. So this particular aircraft had three ways to detect submarines: radars, sonobuoys, and they had a device on the back of the aircraft. It was called MAD, Magnetic Anemometric Detector. But pretty much this airplane would fly across the water, and in one case it would drop sonobuoys. So that was interesting because I was writing code for the simulators, and at that time they had simulators in Hawaii, Sunnyvale, California, Maryland, and one more place, which I can't remember now. However, that was really, really neat because the simulators, just imagine a video game on steroids. So I'm actually so I write code, and we would be able to go to the actual simulator and actually practice. So you would walk into a cockpit, and this cockpit was actually on, I guess it was on hydraulic stilts, and probably it was maybe 30 feet off the ground, and the stilts, and so it had motion as well. So anyway, I would put in my changes, and in order to test your changes, you would need to go through all of the steps needed to actually get the plane going. So I would sit in the cockpit and do all the motions to start the plane to actually test my code. And at that time, it was pretty wild for me because, I would have these thoughts that if I was ever on a real airplane and the pilot got sick and, the co-pilot came out and said, "Can anybody fly?" I was going to raise my hand and say yes, Anyway, yeah, so two jobs that were pretty exciting.
What are some things that are on your bucket list?
Bucket list. That's a great question. I'm kind of easygoing. This is going to be wild. Part of my bucket list is not being able to do anything. I think my bucket list would be to be financially stable and to be able to not set an alarm in the morning and to kind of figure out where I want to go have breakfast.
What is something popular that annoys you right now?
I think music. I'm a big R&B guy, and I don't know if I'm, stuck in the past or maybe nostalgic, but I kind of like music that has a certain amount of depth. I'm not a real music guy, but I do marvel at good instrumentation. And so kind of what annoys me now is if I turn on the radio or listen to music and I don't know what they're saying. They got a simple bass line in the back and something's going on, and 80% of the song I have no idea what they're talking about. I can't comprehend the words. It's not clear. So for me, yeah, that kind of annoys me. And then I think to myself, like if I was a record producer or if I had a record company, I would probably be broke because some of the stuff I'm hearing, I would like, you'd be nope. You come in with a demo and I'd be like, there's no way people are going to buy this. You're not saying anything. It's not thought-provoking. It's simple. So anyway, I went a little long, but music that I can't decipher the words and simple bass lines and just simplicity in the whole setup that annoys me.
So if you could give the people a couple examples of artists that you respect so they can get a perspective of what you're trying to describe, what is pleasing to your ear.
I'm going to give you one that nobody may even know, but there's this jazz guy named Michael Franks that is probably I'm a big fan of Michael Franks. When I was growing up in Oakland, my sister was a music lover and turned me on to this guy Michael Franks, and his lyrical movement it just speaks to me, and it's varied. He'll go from A to Z, and yeah. So I'm trying to think some songs that people may know. Rainy Night in Tokyo. Popsicle Toes is a big one. I won't try to sing because, you'll miss it. But a neat thing, so my wife knows that I'm a big Michael Franks fan, and for one of our anniversaries, I think, maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, she surprised me, and he was actually performing at a small venue in Las Vegas. And so we went out there, and it was really quaint. It was in one of the casinos that's off the Strip, and got to go see Michael Franks. And the theater was probably maximum like 15 seats in depth, and he's right there. So that was cool. I actually met him afterwards and bought the latest CD at that time, and he signed it. And so that was a big deal for me. Another thing is that, like for Michael Franks, when I was still living in Oakland, I actually went to a concert by myself in San Francisco to go see Franks. That's the kind of fan that I was, and it was great. Ran into one of my boys there, and it was cool. So Michael Franks is one of my guys.
What's your favorite song from him if you had to pick one?
Ooh.
One. You're stuck in a room, 24 hours, the song is on repeat. What's that one song?
Right now I want to go with the Rainy Night in Tokyo.
Okay.
It starts out like dun 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 dun. I'll stop there, but yeah, that didn't sound good to me.
Do you have hobbies? What are some of your hobbies?
I want to start by saying no. I actually, there's that old adage that once you become an empty nester that, you'll have free time. Well, that's not actually true. It seems like, my day to day, you get up, you do the regular, I'm going to go to work deal. I teach Sunday school. and I'm at church on Sundays. So after, if I get my 3 or 4 hours, and I do have a guilty pleasure of actually smoking a cigar. So, so my hobby would be actually, downtime. For me, the way that I unwind is I hang out with myself. I don't need music. I like to contemplate. I like to have some quiet time so I could actually let the Holy Spirit speak to me. Sometimes I feel like people have too much going on. Like, I know people that can actually, look at TV, read a book, and maybe have some music on in the background at the same time. And I think there's just too much going on. And I hear that sometimes when I know people that do it, and if I have the opportunity to kind of say, what's going on? And they've told me that, there's just a lot going on inside my head, and I'm thinking about stuff. And sometimes when they sit quietly with themselves, they get spun up and go down thoughts. And if I was to kind of say, when I have them explain it to me, it kind of looks like a tornado to me. Like the tornado was in full bloom, and you've got dishwashers and dressers and cars in this thing, and it's spinning crazy. And so they keep a lot of things going because it's kind of the safe place. But for me, it's just the opposite. I need quiet, and I will actually, I'll reminisce. I'll dream about future things. I wrote a book in my head, in that quiet time. So for me, my hobby is when I'm not grinding to just chill and think forward.
Give me 3 words that describe you.
Consistent, persevering, and loyal.
Do you have a favorite gadget?
My telephone. Was
there an event in your life that describes explanation?
I'll say yes. So, just for the audience, I'm in a wheelchair, and I was in a car accident January 5th, 1992. So it's been 30 plus years. But basically, I fell asleep driving after coming back from a spot in Denver, actually Pierre's. So I lived in Boulder at the time. I was working for IBM, and this night, I wasn't drunk. At that time in my life, I was probably doing a lot of reckless stuff. But this night, I wasn't. I had been working long hours. I was on a program, and we were trying to get some stuff done, and it was probably working 50 plus hours a week. I had just flew back from New York, visited my wife's family, and I came back early because the project was over budget and behind schedule. So for me, to answer that question, the night of my car accident, which happened in Boulder, Colorado, close to our townhouse at that time. So I had, driven the 30 miles, and I was almost home, and hit a T. So stop sign was up. I should have went, left. But to go straight, there was a barrier and like a little ravine. So I blew through it. But that night, that early morning when I woke up in the hospital, God spoke to my spirit, and I knew that He had kept me. I can't really explain it, but I sensed that that night I should have died, but I didn't, and I knew it. So that was a defining moment for me to actually set my foundation differently than it had ever been. So that would be that's my answer to that question.
Do you use programs like Alexa or automated programs like that at home?
No. I actually, me being in technology, this will freak a lot of people out, but I've never used a debit card, and I use a credit card because companies insure credit cards, but I don't have enough money to have somebody hack my cash accounts. So when it comes to technology like Alexa and feeding information into the cloud or to the environment, I kind of stay away from it because I actually know that all that information is being tracked and used, and you can't get away from it. I mean, because you're going to do something, but I try to keep it to a minimum. So I do not use Alexa or any other voice stuff. If I'm on my phone and I'm using maps and I'm driving and you can't actually, punch it in, I'll do basic stuff like that. But as far as giving you a whole lot of information, nope.
Do you play a musical instrument, or have you ever wanted to learn to play a musical instrument?
Okay, no, I don't play a musical instrument, and nor have I ever wanted to. And I tell you why. Because I actually understand that in order to excel in anything and in order to be good at something, you need to be committed to it. I remember a story, and I forget who the lady is. She's and it's an old story, but she was actually a piano player. And I believe somebody said something like, I wish that I could actually play the piano like you. But she went on to explain that she would play so much to where her fingers would bleed. So I understood that in order to be the best that you can be, it takes time and it takes commitment. So when I look at music and instruments, when I look at people that do it at a certain level, I know that that's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 hours. So just from my expectation about what it takes to be good at something, I've never thought about playing music for that reason alone.
Is there an athlete that you would hate to be stuck on an elevator with?
Wow. Which athlete? I don't think, no athlete comes to mind.
Okay, what about one that you would enjoy being stuck on the elevator with?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I'd like to be on the elevator with Tiger Woods and chat with him about golf. And selfishly, I say that because I actually grew up playing golf. My aunt taught me to play golf when I was 12 years old, and she they lived in a different part of Oakland, but I kind of lived in let's just say the neighborhood, and nobody was playing golf in my neighborhood for sure. As a matter of fact, I used to feel funny about bringing my golf clubs out because it wasn't really looked on, warmly. You want to fit in as a young cat and not stand out for any reason. But so when I look at what Tiger was able to do in the game of golf and for the game of golf and his command of the game, I'd like to, he'd be one that I would kind of be okay with being in the elevator with.
So would you say he's the best golfer of all times, and if so, why?
I would say he's definitely one of the best. Let me say this. He's the best I've ever seen. A lot of times I won't go into and try to talk about those that I don't know, but obviously Ben Hogan, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer. You've got some great names. You got some people that have done some great things. Calvin Pete, and they've done great things, in their own right. But Tiger's no joke, man. Tiger would shut the thing down. Tiger changed the game. Tiger was the kind of player that he made you believe. You turn the TV on Sunday, Tiger could be down 3 shots, but he did it enough to when you believe that Tiger might win this thing, and he did it so much, and he did it at such a grand level that it was beyond spectacular. So my vote would be Tiger Woods.
When it comes to technology, is there something that really excites you, and is there something that you fear with technology?
Yeah, from technology, something that excites me. So right now, they're doing a lot of development work. A lot of applications are actually run in the cloud, and I'll give some more detail about that. Versus in the olden days before the cloud, everything was kind of on. They called it on-prem. So on-premise. So 20, 30 years ago, companies would actually have in their building computers with raised floors, and they had backup power systems and this, that, and the other. They managed their whole infrastructure, the whole kit and caboodle. But where it's moved into the cloud, so there's still a room full of computers. The only difference is that there's a company that actually manages those computers. So that takes the staffing, the loading, the precautions to actually preserve the system. So that's kind of exciting about what you can do. One of the things that's also exciting is that within the cloud, the way these companies, whether it's AWS or Azure or some of the lower tier clouds, IBM has a cloud solution, and so does Oracle, but you don't hear about those much. AWS and Azure are two of the big ones for sure. But one of the neat things about being in the cloud is that you can actually scale. So traditionally, if you had computers running, just say you had a store and you had, you were selling goods, and traditionally, that retail, they make their market during the holidays toward the end of the year, where they may, they make 80% of their money. So that means that the load is heavier. Well, if you had a computer system that you were managing on-prem, then you have what you had. If you had 100 computers in there, you just had 100. And if your load got too heavy, then you just maxed out at your 100. Well, the cloud, what it can do is it can scale, and they've got a football field full of computers. So, if you're normally running 50 computers, the cloud, which is exciting. I'm taking a roundabout way to answer your question, but I want to explain it so it makes sense. The cloud will allow you seamlessly to actually scale. So it'll spin up, 50, 100, 200, whatever you need, and you don't see the degradation. Your customers, they flow and things look normal. And to the second part of your question about something that kind of scares me is the artificial intelligence and the machine learning. So, right now when you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning, those are computer terms, but everything is driven by data. So if all the things, like when you're on your phone and you search for a drill, and then a half hour later on your Facebook page you see an advertisement for a drill. So what's happening is that all this data, everything that we do, whether it's Alexa and you're searching for your favorite artist, what's going on in the background, which is kind of scary to me, is the data that they have, and with the artificial intelligence and the machine learning. So just imagine a piece of graph paper, and just imagine that each column maybe everything that you search for on the internet and whatever. So they get all this data, and the artificial intelligence and machine learning. Like if you turn your phone on for Google Maps and you take the same route every day, right? So machine learning would say that based on your patterns, I can actually make an estimate about when you are going to leave your house next Tuesday and what time. So it's actually tracking. So that's kind of scary, because if that information gets into the wrong hands, it's just out there for the taking, and it's only just begun. It's going to get a lot more intrusive and learning.
If you had a time machine and you can go anywhere, where would you go? And would you come back to the present time?
The answer is yes, I would go someplace, and I probably would come back. This is a different thought, but it's in the same vein. So when Donald Trump was running for president, he talked a lot about I'm going to make America great again. Well, my question was always, when he said that, I would go back. I would say, okay, so 2000s, 1990s, 80s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, right? And when I go back and look at redlining and the Iran-Contra scandal, where the highest level of government was pointed out for selling cocaine in communities and taking that cash and buying guns for Iran. When I think about strange fruit, when I think about the Martin Luther King's assassination in 1968, John F. Kennedy's assassination in 1963, and the things that we couldn't do, the things that you don't know about because there were no cameras recording it, right? So I would come back, because I think we're very fortunate to in America to live the way that we do. What I mean by that is we haven't seen war on our soil in our lifetime, and maybe our parents. And then when you look at other things around the country, right, whether it's Ukraine or some of the other moves that Russia has made before, you're thinking about China potentially taking over Taiwan, and then you can just go back, the Shiite and the Sunni, their differences, India, the caste system, and even in Africa, the Tutsis and the Hutus and the Tutsis. I mean, that civil war that claimed over 100,000 lives. So just with that said, just from a historical standpoint, I would come back. But I think I think I would like to go back to if I can go hang out, I would go back to the early 1900s. There was a lot of movement going on. If you look at some dates from a historical standpoint, what you're going to find out is that a lot of the black colleges were probably formed in the late 1800s through the early 1900s. I think Grambling was founded in 1901. When you look at some of the black fraternities and the black sororities, all those were formed in the early 1900s. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. We were founded in 1911. The Alphas were founded in 1906, and I believe the AKAs were founded in 1908. So when I think about slavery just ending in the United States in 1856. So you're thinking about that type of movement. And I'll say, how at that time were people of color able to even go to college and become doctors in that climate? That's amazing to me in light of what we won't do right now. You can go to school for free and do your homework and change your whole life, change your whole trajectory. And it's possible to do it for free, but we don't take advantage of it like we should, because I don't think we know its worth. You could actually grind it out for 4, 5, 6 years, and don't buy shoes, don't go here, don't go there, but just learn, and you can go out and make things happen. You can do things like Quentin's doing. I'm in a studio right now, and it's amazing what he's built. I know Quentin from a long time ago when he was a young man, and I know part of his story, and it's amazing. And I told him earlier, I said, you need to think about sharing your story, writing about it, simply because it can encourage somebody. So I kind of got sidetracked, kind of getting a little emotional, but it's a big deal.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Talk to us about how you ended up at Grambling for college and why your friends used to make fun of you.
So, like I said, my aunt taught me to play golf at 12. And this is my mother's sister, Josephine. She was amazing. And she was, I likened my aunt to being my dad. My dad wasn't around. He was alive, and I did know him. We did get a relationship, later on in my life. But as far as somebody really investing in me and really pouring into me, my aunt would be one of them. But so she taught me how to play golf at 12, and took me out on the range, on the driving range, and I fell in love with it, and it was just a deal. So, and we would play golf tournaments all over California, even play golf tournaments in Portland, and I got pretty good at the game. And so my senior year, I didn't know anything about HBCU. My cousin, which is Eric, who was my aunt's son, he went to San Jose State, so all I knew that I was going to go to San Jose State. Well, at that time, there was a guy that went to my high school that I didn't know, and he called me, and he was like, "Hey, Kev, I think I can get you a scholarship to go to Grambling." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "A scholar? What?" My mom was, she had a regular job. I mean, we didn't, she didn't have the money to think about, paying for college, if you will. But she always talked to me when I was growing up. I always knew that I would go to college. Didn't know how I would pay for it, but she always spoke of that and was serious about me doing my homework. She would call me while she was at work to see if I made it home, and the first question she would ask is, "Have you done your homework yet?" So I was kind of disciplined in doing my work. So anyway, Richard, that went to my high school, that went to Grambling, said, "I think you can get me a scholarship." So give my phone number, and then this Grambling alumni guy, can't believe I can't remember his name right now, but he called me, and he was like, "Hey, I want to put you in contact with the coach of Grambling." And so he got that going, and coach called me and asked me about some numbers and talked golf to me. And I guess whatever I was talking about and whatever he had heard was good enough. And he was like, "I'd like to extend a golf scholarship to you for Grambling. It'll be a half golf scholarship." And I was like, "Yes." So that's how I got to Grambling, and I played that first year, and that ended up turning into a full scholarship. But that's how I made it to Grambling.
So talk about how the joke was on your friends, how they'd always make fun of you, and how you had to remind them about the golf clubs in college.
Yeah, that was a good one. So just imagine this. So I'm in Grambling at that time, 1981. I think Grambling may have had about, 5,000 students. And they all look like me, 99% of them. So, and they're from around the country. Students are from New York to California and everything within. So, I'm in the athletic dorm, and you get your crew and you play dominoes and you do what you do while you're in school. So you form these friendships. Well, so these cats are talking noise to me about, man, you golf ain't no sport, this and that. And now keep in mind, they all golfers now, but at that time, right? They love the game now, right? And but at that time, they were telling me it's not a sport. But what I would tell them, and I remind them, well, look, when I show up at Grambling doing registration, I just sign my name.
Mm.
And, I let it stop there. But what I was saying is that you paying, I'm not. You can say what you want to say about golf, but in a sense, I'm paid. So that was shut it down, right?
Yeah.
We move on. They'd be like, yeah, whatever.
Movie or book?
Movie.
For those who aren't familiar, you are an author. Let's take this moment to talk about your book that you have out.
I've written one book. The title of it is Fatherhood, and it's pretty much about my desire to actually be a father. The backdrop behind that is my dad. I didn't grow up with my dad. He left my mom, or they parted ways when I was about 6 months old, and so that was that. So at that time, what I remember as being a young boy without a father there, I remember having empty places, empty holes, and they would show up differently. From those empty holes, I would make a quiet promise to myself that if I ever had the chance to father a child, that I would try to fill those gaps, that I would not purposely try to let them experience what I did. Now, with that said, relationships are tough. This isn't a knock on some dad that that didn't do this, but this was my conviction. I believe ultimately this is what I was built to do, and so my book is about my story and what I had hoped to do, who I had hoped to encourage is selfishly black man. Not saying that other people can't take from the book, but I really had a desire to encourage men that look like me to kind of let them know that their worth, their importance, how vital they are to their offspring. And from my story, I told my story. I didn't really, that is not in the point of the book. I don't say it like that, but I give you my pros and my cons. I give you stories about my dad telling me that he was going to come pick me up at 1 o'clock to go do something, and I'm waiting, prepared, an hour before, excited about it, and 1 o'clock comes and goes, and 2 and 3, and I'm sitting there. My mom is asking me, am I okay? And me being a boy, I was like, yeah, I'm fine, Mom. But privately, I went back in my room and shed a tear and things. And I had another story. And these stories are things that I remember that where I felt, empty, where I felt naked. I'll tell you I think I mentioned before, but my aunt taught me to play golf. Well, anyway, I was some kind of way, and I would use my aunt's address to go to school. So I really didn't. Oakland had closed districts, and it was based on where you live. And they lived in the Oakland Hills, and I lived in the Flatlands. And we thought that it would be better. The schools were, from an educational standpoint, may give me a better chance. So I always went to school. out of my district. Well, I'm probably in elementary school. I've been doing this from elementary, through high school. I didn't go to schools in my neighborhood, but I was in the Cub Scouts, and the Cub Scouts, they have this thing called the Boxcar Derby. And where I'm going with this, I'm gonna tell you about this empty spot where I felt like, man, I wish I had a dad. I wish he was here to do what I had saw the other dads do. So this Boxcar Derby, they give you a block of wood. It's kind of shaped like a car, and it's got kind of like a wooden axle, and they give you 4 buttons. They're wheels, right? And then you build this car because in a month they're gonna have the Boxcar Derby. They'll meet at the school, and there'll be a little track. It's a simple track, 30, 40 feet, and it goes straight down and maybe go around a turn or two. And the winner, the car that crosses the finish line first, it wins. So I get my car. So talking to my mom, and I'm excited, and I'm gonna fix my car up. And so we go to Ace Hardware, one of the stores, and I get some gold paint. So I got the gold paint, and I painted the car, with the gold paint, and had a little hammer, and the box car. It's a car shaped, and then it's got 2 other pieces of wood, and they have planks. Those are going to be the axles, and then you got 4 nails, and you nail the nails in and put the wheels on, and you're done. So I'm excited. My car is done. I go to the Boxcar Derby. Well, I get to the Derby, and I see these other cars, and they are not like mine. I mean, they were covered with, red, shiny stuff, and I mean, they had other coverings, and I didn't know that they put like weights on the car. I didn't have a clue about physics or mechanics, and these cars are like, it was like looking at like a old hoopty, a Huffy, and then you sitting next to like a BMW, right? So anyway, man, I get into the race. I mean, I know I'm outgunned, and my car stops halfway down the track, and my cousin is there with me, and Eric is 5 years older than me, but he's my father figure there. Everybody else, these kids, they got dads there, man. And I remember I needed to go get my car because it stopped on the track, and I'm crying, but that stuck with me because I was like, man, you know what? If I would have had a dad, like those other kids, right? Then he could have made my car good, And I still get kind of emotional when I think about that. But so stuff like that. So this Fatherhood book was, I tell some of those stories, and I keep it, I shoot it straight, and I keep it real, so that in hopes that some man would be encouraged about whatever he's going through, just to have a desire or know that him showing up in his kid's life is a big deal. It's everything.
If you had a private jet and had access to fly anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I would go to Africa.
Why?
From a historical standpoint, I know where we came from, and the story. But I would love to go back and just lay eyes on the country and just tour it and just feel it.
Let's talk about how you felt as a father once you felt you were successful.
So success is always fleeting for me. I'm still always working. I'm still always grinding because success for me is fleeting. I'm blessed. I've been blessed to be able to provide for my family, but within that, there's other things that are still alive and well. And just to be blunt, I mean, we're still viewed, there's still systemic racism. And with that, I don't want to go down a black or white kick, but let me phrase it like this. Greed and power are formidable opponents. And the way that it works is that those that have, they want to have more, and they want to protect it. And they will do, those that are in power will do whatever it takes to preserve that. And if you are part of the powerless, then you actually fall on the other side. And just so you know that it's not, that it's a sin, it's a crisis in man, right? When you think about India and the caste system, based on how you grew up and which family you grew in, you are slotted to be, a worker or whatever. If you grew up in the right family, then you're slotted to not be a worker, but to maybe have a worker, right? And you can go, mentioned this before, but you can look at different cultures. You can look at, if you were to line up, 20 Shiite Muslims and 20 Sunni Muslims. Now, you and I couldn't tell the difference. But, Saddam Hussein and, there's still the war, right? There's still violence amongst each other, right? So we as a people, that sin nature is just, it's powerful. And if America all looked alike, if America was all black, brown, or white, she would still be infected with this sin nature. So kind of a roundabout way to answer it, but that's what I'm thinking about.
Name me some bizarre things that you've seen in life thus far that your imagination never thought you would see.
I think violence at certain levels, the depravity of man as I've gotten older, things that I wouldn't imagine that are possible, that actually are, I don't understand trafficking of women. How somebody can take somebody that's not his and do whatever he or she does to, whether it's drugs or taking advantage of people, and to get a woman to go out and sell her body. And then on the flip side about that would even be a viable market, that somebody would be consuming that. So you got craziness on both sides, right? They may talk about one side of it, but the fact of the matter is if you got a product and nobody buys it, then it dies. So, there's certain things that the way that people treat people over, selfish desires and greed and power has been probably one of the most amazing things for me to look at, that kind of blows me away, that I would think would not be a thing, but I've seen enough of it, and to know that it's real as real gets, So think about this. So if somebody will kill you for $100 hit, what will they not do? What will they do for 10 million? Right?
Right.
So what makes the news is the $100 hit. But what doesn't make the news is what's going on in between. So what we'll do to one another for power and greed is the big shocker for me.
What do you prefer, darkness or light?
Light. I need a little light. I want to see. When you talk about darkness and light, just let me say that darkness is the absence of light. And you think about that. So give me light all day and all night.
What is something physically that you've seen in your life thus far that you never thought you would see with your own eyes?
Something physical?
It doesn't have to be physical.
I would say I never thought that I would see a person of color be the president of the United States. I never thought that. You see a lot. I've thought about what the boardrooms look like, what the board of directors look like for the top companies, for Fortune 500 companies. Even, you think about, you see, who is in leadership at, high levels, whether it's, the NFL owners, who owns NBA teams, those are kind of public, but, there are folks in the background making a boatload of cash doing everything in between that, right? Who owns the franchises where you spend your money, who owns Walmart, and on and on and on and on. So if those things were not attainable, or a little harder to be attainable, I'm not saying that we as blacks haven't made great strides, but when I thought about the presidency, I was thinking to myself, yeah, that ain't happening. So that kind of threw me. That was one of the things that I physically didn't think that I may see.
For the people who don't know, you're a Christian man, correct?
Yes.
God-fearing man?
Yes.
Would you please share with the people sometimes that he spoke to you?
You remember that? Okay. So in the last chapter of my book, Fatherhood, this is a chapter that I didn't think that I would actually ever share with people, because it was too crazy. But the short story is that my editor at the time, I wanted to be done with the book. And the book, in my mind, is something that God had told me to do. That would be a whole nother topic about how that whole thing worked out. But sometimes when God is making a point, sometimes you actually know and you figure it out just based on what's going on, and that'll be a personal thing between you and God. But so for me, God had inspired me. God had spoke to me to do this thing as a Christian. Well, in this last chapter, An Encounter with God, when it happened, I had a couple of things that happened, and I told my wife about it, and I had a journal at the time. And when I told her, I only told her because I was, fresh off my accident, and I was in a different place than I had ever been before. I was in a place too where I had really drew near to God, because that was my only safe place. If I couldn't trust me to fix me, then I clearly couldn't trust another man. My hope was in God. So two things happened. I was in the hospital. I was in Boulder Community Hospital I was in intensive care for 2 days, 8 days in regular care. Spent the next 4.5 months at Craig Hospital. Got well, started going back to work. At the time, we had moved, bought a home in Aurora, and I would drive back. I would drive from Aurora to IBM. So I don't know if you're familiar with Highway 36, but there's a point to when a hill is at a crest, and when you come down, then you see Boulder. You see the campus to your left, and it's a great scenic view. But it's when you first see Boulder. So I am actually driving to work one morning, and at this time, I had like a 1984 hatchback burgundy Honda, and my radio was broken. I think I tried to fix it. The tape got stuck, and I was sticking screwdrivers in it and all this other kind of stuff. But I wasn't that mechanic, and I broke the whole thing. So I didn't have a radio. So, so I'm driving to work, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm gonna have this conversation with God, and I don't know how these questions got prompted, but I asked God three questions. At that time, we had purchased a new car for my wife, and it was I think a Mitsubishi Galant. So she had used her company to finance it somehow. So it was at a high rate. And so I'm driving over the hill. So I'm asking God, and so let me back up just a bit. So she had a loan. It was at a really high rate. And before this, I had gone to the credit union at IBM after the fact, and we had the car for 2 or 3 weeks. It was well past the date of no return. But I talked to the people at IBM, and they called me a week later, and they said, hey, we've agreed for you a loan at a much lower rate. So some time passed, so I'm driving into work. I'm back to coming into Boulder over the crest of the hill. So I asked God this question. I say, and I wasn't thinking about this. It just came to me, what about the loan? And I hear audible words, and they say, watch me work. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. I was, and I remember like looking to the left and to my right to see if the cars knew, that I'm hearing voices, that I'm hearing God talk. So I'm on a roll. So the second question is, and at that time, I don't know if anything's going on. My marriage is fine as far as I know. So I'm not really even prompted, not thinking about this question. So I say to God, what am I going to do about my marriage? And I hear this laughter. And this is audible laughter. I'm not hearing voices within my head. It's like it's coming from a speaker. So I hear laughter. And then immediately I actually know what that is. And I rephrase the question, and I say, God, what are you going to do about my marriage? And I hear these audible words, whatever you ask me to do. So now I'm starting to get a little freaked out, and I'm starting to get a little scared now, because I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange, but even just within that answer, what I was clear on was that it is what I pray about, what I ask God about, what you pray about, what you ask God about is actually important, right? More important than you probably know, if it's something that's in His will, right? I'm not saying you having conversations with God, asking God to do things or do things on your behalf that are clearly things that He wouldn't do, So anyway, so that was interesting. So I start to get scared, and, because I'm tripping right now. I'm like, man, you tripping, Kev. You done got too much. You doing too much. So I got this third question out of the blue. I say, God, what are you going to do about me walking? Keep it in mind. So I'm paralyzed, and I'm still paralyzed to this day. And I hear the response, after all I've done for you, do you think I would miss this opportunity? So that was kind of weird, man. And I've So just so you'll know, about the first question when he said, "Watch me work." So I get back and I call the Mile High Mitsubishi, and I know that if you know anything about contracts, once you sign, it's a wrap. Ain't no, they're like, well, I'm sorry about that. You signed that lease. You can't come back and negotiate a lease after you signed it. So some of you know, because some of you had debt collectors, they come back and get it. So anyway, I call Mitsubishi and I say, they put me in contact with the finance guy, and I say, hey, got the situation where I got a better rate, and we don't talk much at all. And this guy just says, okay, Mr. Patrick, let me look into it. He calls me back that same day toward the evening, and he's like, okay, it's done. Bring in the paperwork. I was like, wow. So keep in mind, what God had told me was, watch me work. So I wasn't calling with no long stories. I didn't even, I know this dude from Adam. I'm not talking a lot. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is, what are you going to do about my marriage? So what I've done, I've been careful about what I ask God for. I'm careful about how I pray for my marriage. And this is in the middle of life, relationships. You're going to have good and bad times. And I've had those, right? But I've asked God to preserve my marriage in spite of me, right? And just let me be on point. So to this day, I'm still married. And that's by the grace of God. I mean, it's a whole nother story about, how that is even possible. But so that's true. And the third question is how God responded to me with walking again. So sometimes I say, what, am I misinterpreting that? What that meant to me was that I'm going to heal you. You're going to walk again. So, sometimes I may be at church and whatever, and I'll ask myself, is this the day? I may just pop up. And then sometimes I say, maybe God, I heard you wrong. Maybe I'm misinterpreting that. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, is that what I know is that God is faithful and has been faithful, and whatever that means, I'll know when I know. But I don't get up in the morning feeling bad about me not walking. But there's always an expectation that anything could happen. And here's the deal. If I die hoping, I'm never let down. If that makes any sense, right? Some people have said, when you meet God, it may happen then. But in this crazy, based on what I've seen God do, I just, I can't even lose hope. And there's an expectation that he is faithful to what he does. And keep in mind, he was spot on 1 and 2. So he's 2 for 3. So I'm in the cut. And I know I'm taking too long. There's a third one, but
you're not taking too long. Take your time. That's why we're here.
Okay. So there's a third one. So there's another thing that I write about in that last chapter of the book. And keep in mind, this is stuff that it's taken me a while. Matter of fact, I've, just kind of gotten to the point to when there was a time, for years I couldn't even talk about this without, breaking down, So now, my eyes are a little wet, but I'm still, I'm on point. Voice, my voice will crack. I couldn't get through it. Let's take a break. Me talking about that. So the next time of something that was really strange that kind of happened that I was careful about not sharing with people. So we had moved into our first home. We were living in Aurora near the Buckingham Mall, and Asha is probably she's less than a year. You know, she had just got to the point to where, you know, she may sleep through the night. Excuse me. She was sleeping through the night in her own room. So anyway, we had a little family room area, and next to the family room there was a sliding, glass door that went out to the backyard, and I had like this recliner chair that one of the church members, Sister May, had given me, and it was a beige recliner chair, and you could, pull the handle back and put your legs up. So I am actually writing a letter to a cousin that's in prison, and I'm writing him this letter because I had been hanging out in Ephesians 6 kind of hard, and Ephesians 6 in those early verses, it talks about standing firm, and it talks about this war that we're in. It talks about this spiritual war that we're in. It talks about principalities, and it paints this picture that you are in a war, and sometimes you do good, you do well just to stand, right? Sometimes you do well just to hold your position and not go backwards. So anyway, I'm thinking to myself, and there was another situation. I got another boy in jail that had he had murdered somebody, and the short story was that at a club, and some things went on, and it was a young lady there, and I think he may have had some kind of relationship with her, and maybe one of her ex-boyfriend or something comes in, they get into a little beef and leave the club, and supposedly the guy, my friend is in the parking lot, and he's loaded with his gun, he's strapped, and this other cat is in the car and kind of drives at him like he's gonna run him over, and he unloads the whole clip into the car, and it's a wrap. So he's in prison. So I'm actually writing him, and I'm in my mind, I'm trying to figure out, these cats are good cats, and they're not really, on the edge doing a whole lot of crazy stuff. I know people that were just living, I don't want to say foul, but just living lives that were on the edge and just prone to insanity on so many levels. So anyway, I'm reading Ephesians 6, and I get this revelation that, okay, this is how it can happen. Because you're in the war, and Satan is always toying with you. He's always trying to pull you off task. He'll use people. He'll do whatever he can. Right? You walking down this area, you minding your own business, and somebody is trying to get you to do something that that you had made a conviction not to do. But that's the nature of this war that we're in. So I got this revelation, kind of excited in Ephesians 6, and I'm in the middle of this letter, and I'm in this reclining chair, and so to my left is a sliding door, and after God gives me this revelation and I'm starting to write it, outside of the door I hear this sinister laughter, kind of like the worst movie that you have. I can't really explain it, but I knew what it was, and I got a chill, and I knew because I was about to continue telling in this letter that I'm writing to my boys in prison about this revelation that I just got, to figure out how these things could happen. So at that time, so here's the crazy part. I'm writing this letter, I hear this sinister laughter, and I'm in this reclining chair, and the chair, raises up and it's going towards the ceiling. When it's raising up, Asha had been sleeping through the night. Well, when the chair starts to raise up, all of a sudden, Asha, and I've been out here all night because I'm a late night guy. At that time, Asha starts to cry, and like I say, she's less than a year, but I know she's sleeping through the night now. She starts to cry, so I pray. I say, God, let me finish this thought. Let me finish writing this letter. Asha stops crying immediately, and I'm back on the ground. So this was a little funny thing about the chair raising. It's not like I looked to the side and saw myself up, but it was just, I'm just in this space, and I feel like the chair is going up. I didn't look to the side and have a conversation and look down and be like, "Woo, you off the ground." But it was in this moment where these things happen. So that was another one. Like I said, I never thought that I would even tell any of those stories because they were too, I would think people being like, Kev, I don't know what's going on with you, and your walk with God, but you hearing voices, you hearing sinister laughter outside your door, chairs raising up. Man, you might need to go seek a little help, bruh. Right?
Right.
So I never told nobody, man. I'm talking about for like a long time, like 10 years, like I said. And only reason why I wrote that was because, like I said, God and he encouraged me to write this book, told me to write this book, and wouldn't let me rest, and thought I was done and didn't even have a last chapter, but he gave me that last chapter, and I was like, really, God? You want me to write that kind of stuff? I ain't even walking again. You want me to write that? So that was, that's one of my, stories about how God has interacted, with me. And he hasn't interacted with me like that ever again, so pronounced. But I will say that I'm much more sensitive to the movement of the Holy Spirit. I'm much more confident in the God that I serve. I'm less confident in myself. And let me put words around that. Me being less confident in myself doesn't mean that I don't work, right? Doesn't mean that I don't give everything something, my all. It doesn't mean if I'm feeling like God is telling me to go right, that instead of going left, that I don't go right. But there's also the understanding that if in fact God is ordering my steps, then he's got a plan. So, that's a weird point that in this Christian walk where, I don't want to make somebody not work. And let me give you maybe a clear example about what I'm talking about, because I've thought about this. So I went to college, right? So you can have a thought to say this, well, and I got a job, right? And I've been blessed just in my career, right? So there's a thought that you can say, well, you know what? If I wouldn't have sent that application to the college, I wouldn't have got accepted, right? If when I went to college, if I didn't do my homework, then I couldn't graduate, right? So I got a job. If I didn't send a resume to the job asking for a job, then I wouldn't have a job. So when you go down that path, then, what I learned from my car accident when I was dropped so low, when I figured out that I'm not all that I thought I was, it gave me perspective on this thought about what I'm telling you. So if I say, if I didn't do this and I didn't do that, then what that was telling me was that at the end of the day, it's me. I'm the guy, right? I'm the guy that's making moves. I'm the guy that's calling all the shots, right? Because if I didn't do that, then how could it happen? Is that not logical, right? Well, so what happens is that there's this other thing to when, yeah, you're doing all that you know to do. Yeah, you're doing it at your best. You may not be the best at it. Yeah, on and on and on. But there's this. So there's a why, and so picture the letter Y, and you doing everything that you do on one side of the Y, but the other Y, that on that other leg of Y is God, right? So God knew you while you were in the womb. God had plans for you and me, right? He built us specifically to do certain things, right? So what I figured out is that it's the God that's in front of me, right? Yeah, I did what I did, but I already know that God is moving to it. Just because you sent 100 resumes out doesn't mean that you didn't know who was going to get you or if you were going to get hired at all. But it's God that opens and closes doors. It's God that makes that other stuff happen that maybe sometimes, depending on how you're looking at it, you can miss it, right? If you're not looking correctly, then you can miss God's handiwork and you can confuse yourself and think that, you grinding and you working, that you don't recognize that God is actually in front of you, ordering your steps, making moves, right? To when you have this crazy thing happen, when you decide to go to the store and you see, Michael, and Michael had a cousin that you hadn't seen in a long time, and you call Michael's cousin, and then some crazy stuff happened to help you do that thing that you were doing, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're not looking at it correctly, then you miss the handiwork of God. So, that's a roundabout way. I hope you could picture that. I hope that encourages you to still grind out, to still be the best that you can be, but not losing sight that God's got you, right? If you're doing, what He's called you to do, right? The Scripture says that God will give you the desires of your heart, right? And I've thought about that verse over and over, and what that means to me is that. So you say if God will give you the desires of your heart, then the question that you got to ask is, what's a desire, right? Mm-hmm. So what I want to say, a desire is not necessarily you and I going down the street saying, I see a Lamborghini and say, I like that Lamborghini, I want a Lamborghini. A desire is not saying that you looking at something and figuring that I want that. A desire is not a want, right? I'm not saying that you won't want your desire, but is it a desire is something that's in front of that. So what I think about when it says that God will give you the desires of your heart, what I think a desire is something that God put on you. So God gives you something that you can't shake, right? Whether it's, what'd you say, Quentin? Whether it's, some of the things that he's endeavoring to do, his love for music and on and on. Some things you do, you'll figure out that, nobody else in your family's doing. Why do you like that thing that you like, right? So that thing, that desire that God says that He will give you, the desires of your heart, is not the thing that you're wanting, that you made up yourself. I'm not saying that. So you still want the desire, but you got to be careful that it's not the selfish thing, that it's not your dream, that this desire is something that God put on you and you can't shake it, right? You might not even really want to do it, but it never goes away, right? So this desire that God says that He will make happen and give you is something that He built you for, something that He put on you. And I think we have to be careful, as we do the desires, as we do these things that God has called us to do, that He built us to do. We have to be careful about not gauging this thing by the world standard. So what I mean by that, right? So we got to be careful to say that, if in fact I'm supposed to do this thing and God gave me this thing to do, from the worldly standpoint, the way that we might measure success is how much money we made, how many accolades, right? What we've done. Did I make it to TV? Well, those are. I'm not saying that those things aren't things to measure off of, but this desire, it may not be measurable like that, right? I'm saying it's more important for you to do the thing that we've been called to do, the thing that God put on you to fulfill yourself, right? Right. So it gets kind of, just kind of hazy, and so, if God called you to do, and we'll just use Q, right? He gave you this vision to build this gym. He's given you a bunch of visions, and you've been faithful and put some great energy into the things, right? Well, the crazy thing about it, a lot of times you can't see what God has done until years later when you actually look back, right? It may be one person that's in here that comes to the gym, that comes to do work, right? That God had called to this safe space, that God has a special plan for him, right? So if Q isn't faithful to do what thus saith the Lord, this kid doesn't have any place to go. The wisdom, the relationship that'll be built, from Q and some of these people that he's working out with, right? You don't really know it, but 5-10 years later, they may do something great. They may make the cure for cancer. You have no idea about what God is doing, right? They may do something to save a million people, right? And Q just may survive, right? So I take that time to paint that story. Your desire and you doing what God told you to do may not pan out because you get to buy a second home in Vail, and you have the chance to travel the world or whatever else you can think about that you consider great. Mm-hmm. So anyway, wow, that was a roundabout way.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah. Do you plan on writing another book?
I do have a thought. I'm such a crock pot. I'm not a microwave. It just takes me time to process and to think through, which is why, when I talked earlier about, what's a good space for me is to be, on the porch with no music, and I need quiet time. But so with that said, I've got this other thought that I've been toying with, but I just, I'm asking God to speed me up to make me not a crock pot and, make me an oven. I'm not even saying make me a microwave, Don't even give me 2 minutes. Give me an hour instead of cooking collard greens for 8 hours, right?
Correct.
So this book, so this thought, I got this thought about completing or starting. I started to take some notes on it, but I call it the psychology of the code switch. And I've got this vision in my mind, and I don't mind sharing it. If God gives it to you, you can steal it too, because it's not about me. It's about getting things out. It's about God's will being done. And when I say you, I wasn't talking to Q. I'm talking about anybody that's listening, right? So this psychology of the code switch is, I want to define the code switch is as not being your authentic self for the sole purpose of making someone else feel comfortable. And then I'll give you some examples. But what I want to open up in the book is I want to have a PhD psychologist. I want to talk with him or her and kind of tell them what I'm thinking, and I want to have a kind of a clinical discussion, not a long discussion, but just so we can lay out, what I'm talking about, this code switch. So when you think about not being your authentic self for the sole purpose of making someone else feel comfortable, one of the examples would be is one of the stories that often happen in Black families, right? When you get a little older, right, you get a story from some older person, your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, cousin, parent, right? They said, look, when you leave, if you get stopped by the police, here's what to do, right? Don't move too fast. Don't make any fast movements. Keep your hands by your side. Don't talk back. Say yes, sir. Say yes, ma'am, right? And just and tone it down totally, right? So you got to think. So if you're being your authentic self, right, and you with two of your homeboys, three of your homeboys, and you guys going down the street singing the latest rap, right, getting expressive, and you moving fast, and you bopping, and they doing line one, they doing line two, and now you being who you are, right? And you may have your hoodie on, right, or whatever, right, and your pants may be sagging, right? Well, that's who you are. You're being authentic to yourself, to the beat, to the mood, right? Well, this code switch says that, look, check that cat at the door. That guy that you are, don't be him. Shut it down, right? Change your dialect. Use the King's English good. No verb subject disagreement, right? No run-on sentences. Get it right, because your life is at stake, right? So that particular code switch, right? And just to write about that, and I want to do something neat too. I want to write about the code switch from both sides, right? So one of the stories that we don't actually talk about too much or get is that when the police officer is in his morning briefing, right, he gets a death count of fellow officers from around the world, potentially, right? Officer Johnson made a basic traffic stop. He didn't know who he stopped, John Smith, and walked to the door, and, John was a wanted felon, and John unloaded the 9 into him, and officer's dead, right? And no, right? So you get both sides, of yin and yang, good and bad, right? And so I want to talk about, and the thing about that is that I've got, multiple stories about the code switch, and I want to talk about the psychology of the code switch and why we do why we do what we do, right? I think one of the biggest code switchers is the Black mother, the black woman. Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, you've got mothers running households with absentee fathers for whatever reason, right? We got a lot of historical stuff. We got systemic racism. We got folks in jail. We've got many would argue unequal sentences. You've got when crack came on the scene, cocaine was there, right? Crack came on the scene. They started giving cats, 10 years, more time. You got, 3 strikes you out. You got some things that are working. You got the educational school system. Schools are funded by tax dollars, right? If there's less tax dollars in your community, then you get less stuff. They got more. You get less stuff, which means that you don't get the same books. You might not get a computer. Your school may be different. So you've got things. You've got redlining that has taken place. When the homes in your community and my community, they cost more, right? Because they have some things going on to when, the funders won't fund you, right? You don't think about this stuff, but, State Farm Insurance or Allstate, if you've ever done, which I've done as a young kid, right? If you ever want to find out some stuff, you go use a zip code in the hood and use a zip code outside of the hood and figure out how much the insurance costs to cover your car. What you'll find is that there's a market difference. So here's what happens, right? So you got this stuff going on, right? Systemic things that deal with, we'll call it systemic racism, but as I mentioned to you before, power and greed are formidable opponents, and greed and power and money is a thing. People, they're going to do what they do because I want to get more, right? If I got $1 billion, I want $2 billion, right? If you made $100,000, you really want to make $200,000. So it feeds itself. It's thirsty. It's hungry. It doesn't die. The appetite is insatiable. So, I won't end that question because I feel like I'm talking too much, but it kind of centers like just around that, around those thoughts, and you can take it from there and do some pondering for yourself.
Name a situation in life thus far that you've been through that you wanted to quit. And there's somebody out there listening and you want to inspire them with your story that they shouldn't quit.
There's been some times in my career where I've been faced with, I say adversarial situations, when you are doing, some part of your best, right? And when you're feeling that, when you're looking at the lay of the land, that, all things being considered, that, you're in step with your peers, right? And, but sometimes I've been in situations where I just felt like, for some reason, sometimes people just don't like you. For whatever, they may not like you because you smile too much, right? Because you got a pep in your step, right? Because you're confident, because you're handsome, because you're pretty. They think you're handsome, and they think you're pretty, and people talk to you that don't talk to them. It's just some weird kind of stuff. And maybe you look like a uncle that they hate or whatever. It's all kind of crazy stuff. But you may run into stuff to where you're in positions to where you are not received, maybe in my mind, fairly in no parts of yours. Sometimes you do stuff, maybe you like, sometimes I don't like you either, and I don't like you, but sometimes you just minding your own business and you get received different. So for me, it's been some situations just in my career to where I've run up against, managers, and, and it's weird, they'll be like, look, I know how much money you make. Maybe you're making too much money. Maybe I don't feel like you should be making that, because, and then I can't put words in the mouth. I can just imagine, about why they may say that, right? And don't feel like you should be doing that. And, how you got I'm not even a car guy, right? I mean, I've always been kind of basic on cars, and this is one of the reasons why, because a lot of times I'm trying not to bring no extra attention to myself, because in my mind, it plays itself out differently. So this is part of the code switch too, right? Right. We play it down, right? Because you want to make people feel comfortable. But so, to get to your question about, places when I wanted to kind of quit, or in my mind, places where I've been, kind of more discouraged, if you will, to when you know you're in a situation, right? And when the power player has their thumb on you, right, and you feel like you don't have a lot of movement from life circumstances, right, and you just want to get out. So I would say more so not necessarily wanting to quit, but being in situations when you feel pressure on you that is maybe read incorrectly. And I'm not saying that there may have been some times when I could have been better, where I could have done more. But then you look at it, and in my mind I say like, well what about Michael? I'm better than him. I know it, right? I'm killing this cat, but you can't really, these are internal thoughts. So logically, it'll throw you off, right? Oh, because you guys, play games together, because you guys play D&D together, Dungeons and Dragons, and you go to lunch. I don't want to go to because I don't want to go to lunch with everybody. Y'all want to talk about some other music. I got this other music on my head. I may want to talk about God. So you'll find these things to when I started to, reflect on things, and it gets to be kind of crazy. Just imagine if you have a Super Ball in your hand and you throw this Super Ball down, and when you throw it down, you could lock it in a square, and it would go, and it keeps going, right? So I would think like that about you processing life circumstances. You got all these things going on. You're like, it's not cool. Dude, you own me. You want to fire me, right? You want to get me. So I would say it would have been the job in some certain situations when you're dealing with folks, when it's kind of crazy.
Name me a situation in life where you felt you should have quit.
So, interesting question. There have been times to when I should have quit, and I actually did quit. Right. So a lot of times I don't have a lot of examples of when I actually maybe should have done something and I didn't do it from out of fear. And I'm sure I have some, but those aren't coming to mind right now. But I will tell you this. I've been in situations too where I know for a fact that God has ordered my steps. There was a situation, 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20. But I was working with a startup company, and things were going good, and I was doing good work there, coding in C++ and doing some other stuff, right? Well, I had an opportunity came out of the blue, right? I worked with one of my mentors that went to this other company, and one thing led to another, and I went to interview for this job, and it was for, we were moving. It was it was moving to some new technology, but but I wasn't really feeling like I needed to go, but so I went and interviewed, and they made me this offer, which was an incredible offer, and the technology I was going to be starting to code in Java, which was a new thing. It was on the rise then. So I went, and they made me an offer. Well, here's the thing about it, when you said about when you should have. I get this picture from time to time when I picture, and you guys, depending on how old you are, you may not remember Tarzan. Well, Tarzan, he in Africa, swinging on ropes through, going from tree to tree. But what I likened this thing that I did was God on the rope, kicking down doors, killing it, opening it up, right? You go, sometimes you do some stuff, you show up and you just, things just happen, right? When I was talking to Q about some of his musical stuff, reminds me of that about, how you do this thing and you're loving it, and then you got magical things happen that you couldn't even think of. You in New York with big stars, with some of the biggest names, right? You're doing concerts with some of the most famous people. It's just crazy, but you'll know that God is in front of you kicking down doors. So for me at that time, I didn't really want to go, but I was scared not to go. So I went. So for me, sometimes it's not my nature 9 times out of 10 to be the one that says, if I wish I would have did that if I could have, right? So in answer to that question, I've made some moves, not because I wanted to, but God was in front of me, and it was clear that in my mind that he was saying go, right? In the way that I know that he speaks to me when I need to go. How he speaks to you on what go means, that's between you and him, and it looks different for everybody. And then I'll end with this question about to try to put some parameters around what I'm talking about. So I'm the guy that, when I get in situations, I've been in rooms and you meet people and you have some interactions. I'm the guy that, I leave the room, I was like, yeah, you probably you did a little too much, Kev. You shouldn't have said that, That wasn't really cool. You was over the top. They didn't really mean that. You didn't have to, hit so hard. Maybe you were out of line. Maybe you misread that. I'm the guy that's leaving the room saying, did it again. I was doing too much, right? Some people leave the room and they say, you know what? I wish I can go back to the room. If I can go back, here's what I would have said. So some people are leaving stuff on the table and they're wishing that they can go back and because this is what I would have said. Well, I'm the other, more than not, I'm on the other side. I done let it all out, I gotta figure out how to say, I'm toning myself down. I'm saying, Kev, just because you're thinking about it, don't say that. No, that's not cool. You're doing a little too much, right? So that's my answer to about in a more roundabout way about have I not done things that I kind of regret. I'm sure I have, but more times than not, I'm on the other side. I done went through the door. I done kicked it in. Saying to myself, man, you shouldn't have got no reason. Why didn't you knock on the door?
Remind the people one more time where they can find your book at, Kevin.
Yes, just go to Google or your favorite browser or your favorite search engine and Google Kevin Patrick Fatherhood and hit the enter key and you'll find me. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed your time like I have with Kevin Patrick. This is another episode of the Never Quit podcast, sponsored and hosted by Quotes Jungle. Peace.